is Alex DeJamus. I am a sophomore at the University of Texas. Essentially, my whole childhood I spent at an orphanage for children with disabilities in Nizhny Lomov. It's about 600 kilometers southeast of Moscow, so pretty far, essentially in the middle of nowhere. Very tiny orphanage, and I was born with deformed legs, so I couldn't walk, and so I had this square scooter, and so I had to push myself against the floor my whole childhood, essentially, for 16 years. That's things like that, especially a facility. It was an orphanage for children with disabilities, but it didn't have an elevator, for example, like things like that are quite preposterous. We were treated pretty well. Again, we were treated pretty well. There were times when the conditions weren't the best. You always have to eat the same food, essentially. You have no choice. You don't really have a lot of freedom. A lot of children who are on wheelchairs, which was the majority of children, they never left the orphanage. That is their bubble for 16 years of their life. They have to be surrounded by, these walls. So it is a big problem. It is a big social problem. And whenever we would go outside of the orphanage, for example, into the town, we would always be stared at. It would feel like you're on a different planet. Or people would stare and say, "Well, yeah, he has disabilities," and literally just stand and stare. And that was very shocking, and that kind of exposes that very closed-mindedness and cultural issue in Russia in terms of accessibility of orphans into society. I was adopted, the way I was adopted, I came for medical treatment to Dallas at the Texas Scottish Rite Hospital. It's a hospital that provides free orthopedic treatment for children from Texas, and they made an exception. They said, "Okay, we'll take a kid from Russia," and the family that I stayed with were my host family, and they decided to adopt me. I was 15, so it was very close to the age limit of international adoption. So I can see the difference that in the lifestyles. I can say, well, this is what would happen to me if I stayed at an orphanage. Essentially, no future at all. Very little opportunities for people with disabilities, especially orphans. That's why I think I have a little bit credibility when it comes to speaking about it, because I still keep in touch with all my friends from my childhood, and that's what we're trying to appeal to Russian politicians, to Russian audiences. You say that, yeah, I know the difference. We know the difference. That's why adoption should not be banned. This Facebook page is it's not an actual organization, it's just a page. Very simple, kind of a statement. Here are the stories from all over the world, and we're not speaking as Americans or as Russians, I'm speaking as a person, as an adopted child. Here are the stories. We're not talking about nationalities. That's why it's Orphans Without Borders. It's kind of a cosmopolitan approach to the idea of a fundamental right for a family. You are targeting specific policy, but policy comes from perception, and perception is what is challenging to manipulate in Russia, in an environment where outflow of information and availability of information is tightly controlled by certain media companies, essentially by the government. So that's why Facebook page is effective. Again, it's not massive enough to say, launch a huge campaign, but it's a piece. These are voices of families who are waiting. They've met their children already before the ban, and now they'll never be able to adopt them. So their voices matter.